Everybody, Charles from GMAT Ninja Tutoring here. Today we're going to talk about the best 200 hours you'll ever spend studying for the GMAT. This is our 13-week study plan. Everything you need to make a big leap on the GMAT showing up in your inbox every single week. All you need to do, sign up on the GMAT Club website. You're going to get this in your inbox every week. It's going to have a full list of your homework, how to interpret those homework results, and absolutely everything you need to make a big jump. And best of all, it's totally free. If you want to spend a ton of money on tutoring, call me. But you really don't need to do that. This is my best effort to take everything I've learned in 24 years of tutoring and stick it into a document to help you work on your own without getting out your wallet at all. All right, so you might be wondering, what is this study plan thing? Well, superficially, it's a homework list. But in reality, it's a whole lot more than that. So we've designed it to make sure that you maximize your efficiency as you study for the GMAT. And how do we do that? Really, there's three big things we're chasing here. One is there's a limited supply of official materials for the GMAT. So we want to make sure that you're using those in the best way to maximize your learning and at the best points in your process so that you're ready on test day to get your best possible score. Second, we're going to make sure that you're studying the right things more generally at the right times. So for example, you're going to see a whole lot of arithmetic and algebra on the GMAT, not very much probability, combinatorics. So we want to make sure you're building a really strong base with those fundamental math concepts, those fundamental verbal concepts, and the fundamental skills you need to succeed in data insights. So we're going to build that base first, and then from there, you're ready to tackle some of the things that are a little bit more obscure, a little bit less common in the exam, such as probability or funny looking graphs on data insights. And third, we're going to help you interpret your results. So you can sit there and do all of the practice work that you want to, but if you don't know what to make of it,
I don't know,
and what to do with it exactly to improve,
I don't get it.
You're going to be inefficient. So one of the things we built into the study plan is an entire post every single week.
Really?
To help you interpret your results and figure out how to use your results to get better. All right, so you might be wondering, who is the study plan for exactly? When we designed this, what we had in mind was a fairly typical GMAT Club member starting somewhere in the 500s, trying to achieve a goal in the 600s, mid 600s, maybe even a 700. The important thing is we expect you to be looking for a big score improvement, 50 plus points. Now, if you don't exactly fit that typical profile of starting in the 500s, going for mid 600s or above, that's okay. Plenty of opportunities to customize your studies. We'll talk more about that a little bit later in this video. And we're going to give you benchmarks every single week. And if the benchmarks we give you are too aggressive because your goals are a little bit lower, great, you can adjust accordingly. Or if you're shooting for a super, super high score, then you can always adjust those benchmarks upward. Here's the really important part. We're going to kick your ass doing this. So the goal is to spend 15 hours every single week studying, ideally 2 hours per weekday, maybe a little bit more on the weekends. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not for people who are going to do this casually. You need to be able to commit 15 hours. The goal is to completely immerse you in your GMAT studies. We want you to make that big improvement as quickly as you can in calendar terms. We don't want to draw out your studies for 6 months, 9 months, a year. The idea is you're going to get in, work super, super hard for 13 weeks, get your score, get out. That's the goal. So if you're not ready to make that type of commitment, maybe this isn't quite the right time for you to start the study plan. So now we're going to get into the structure of the study plan and how best to use it. Before we do that, two things I want you to understand about how GMAT scoring works. First and foremost, the most important thing by far, understand that the GMAT is an adaptive exam, meaning that the algorithm is trying to find the level of question at which you get about half right, half wrong. So what that means is if you miss questions that are easy for you, you can send your score spiraling downwards in a huge, huge, huge hurry. It is absolutely crucial that you never make careless errors on this exam. It is the single most important thing you can do for your score. With that in mind, we're really going to focus on that as the study plan moves forward. Second, if you're trying to figure out, well, hey, what's it going to take for me to gain 40 points or 60 points or 100 points, whatever your goal might be, keep in mind that there's a nice linear relationship between your section scores on quant, verbal, and data insights and your composite score. If you gain 3 points on any section or gain 3 points on any combination of sections, that's going to add 20 points to your composite score on the GMAT. So as you're thinking about your score goals and going, hey, I need to gain 40 points, you need to gain 6 points on individual sections in that situation. So just keep in mind, 3 section points equals 20 composite points. That will help you as you move forward to kind of think about how much am I looking for on each section. Okay, with all that in mind, 5 key features of the study plan that I want you to be aware of. First of all, we're going to build a strong base first. So on quant, for example, there's all kinds of minor topics that people get really excited about. Probability, combinations, permutations, those sorts of things. Those might only be 2 or 3% of the questions you're going to see on the GMAT, but algebra and arithmetic are going to underpin everything. So we want to make sure you've got a really strong base to begin with. We're going to start with the most commonly tested topics first, across the board, quant, verbal, and data insights, and then build to the less common things. Second, we're going to throw some really easy stuff at you deliberately in that first couple of weeks. The reason is, on an adaptive test, again, if you miss easy questions, that's the apocalypse. That's what can really pull your score down. So we're going to make sure that you don't get lulled to sleep by easy stuff. Make sure you're executing perfectly. Once your execution is perfect, you always get questions right that you know how to get right. Then we're gonna move you on to tougher stuff. Third key feature, data insights. We've got a little bit of a problem. There's not a ton of official study materials out there. We wanna be super, super careful about when and how to use those. So we're gonna start those a little bit later in the study plan. And we're also gonna be really, really careful about how many we give you each week. Also, keep in mind that data insights builds on those fundamental quant skills and on your fundamental reading skills. So we're gonna work on those first and foremost in the first few weeks, and then start piling on the data insights question types a little bit later. Fourth, we wanna make sure that you stay inspired and that you're kind of aware of the journeys that people have taken who are in positions similar to yours. We're gonna feature a nice debrief every single week from a GMAT Club member who suffered, usually one who suffered quite a bit, had to work extra hard to get their target score and got there in the end. So if you're having a hard time staying motivated, lean on your peers, lean on fellow GMAT Club members who have been through the same thing that you're going through. And finally, every single week, there's gonna be an entire post in the thread dedicated to interpreting your results intelligently. Please don't skip that. The temptation is to just kind of look at your results and go, yep, okay, fine. Now I'm gonna go do more homework. Take a moment every single week, think through the benchmarks that we're gonna give you, think through the advice we're gonna give you depending on how you're doing. It is one of the most crucial parts of the study plan and one of those things that we spent the most time on when we designed it. Okay, one of the most important things I want you to focus on as you go through the study plan is how to make the most of your mistakes, how to maximize your learning. If you're doing 15 hours of homework a week, again, 2 hours per weekday, 3 or 4 hours per weekend day, you're gonna make a ton of mistakes. That's a good thing, that's how you learn. But here's what I don't want you to do. What we see a lot of people do on GMAT Club is as soon as you make a mistake, you go and you read a bunch of explanations of it, and you might spend 10, 20, 30 minutes overanalyzing every single question you miss. And that can take an eternity. It's really, really easy for you to spend hours reviewing a handful of questions.
It doesn't work.
Now keep in mind on the GMAT, there's a ton of variety. You're never gonna see the same question twice, or very, very rarely see the same thing presented in the same way more than once. Memorizing steps is not great. Learning from explanations is not very efficient. Instead, here's what I want you to do. So do a set of questions, leave it alone for a while, figure out which ones you missed, make note of it in your error log. Then a couple of days later, I want you to come back and retry the questions you missed completely from scratch as if you've never done them before. What that does for you is, number one, it gives you a chance to figure it out the second time. So sometimes you miss it the first time, second time something clicks and you go, oh, that's how you do it. Cool, learn something. That is by far the best way to learn. Now, if that happens and you get it right the second time, I want you to think, wait a minute, was that a careless error? If it was, pay special attention to it, because as we've said, those careless errors are absolute killers on adaptive tests like the GMAT. Now, what do you do if a question was legitimately hard for you? You missed it the first time, you missed it the second time, you're legitimately lost. I want you to be very, very careful with those. Some questions, if it's something that's really hard or really obscure, maybe a non-official question that's not very well written, I don't want you to overanalyze it. Some errors you just want to let them go and say, you know what, this isn't really part of a pattern in my mistakes. I haven't missed other things like this. Maybe this isn't where I should spend my time. I'm not saying that you should never read explanations. There's great ones all over GMAT Club. I just want you to be really careful about using your time wisely and use those explanations only if you're sure they're going to help you with a broader issue that's cutting across multiple questions. All right, one of the most important things I want you to do as you study for the GMAT, please don't binge. What I mean by that is marathon study sessions, cramming for the test is simply not effective on the GMAT. The test is really going after your reasoning skills, your reading skills, your ability to solve problems, analyze funky looking data. None of that is something that you can just learn by memorizing a bunch of explanations or a bunch of steps. So don't binge. What we want to see is a couple of really good high quality practice hours every single day, maybe a little bit more on the weekends. If you start to do more than that, you're going to get fatigued, you're going to make careless errors, you're going to develop bad habits. That's what kills your GMAT score. So whatever you do, don't binge in terms of doing tons of hours all at once. Stay fresh, keep your practice high quality. Second, I want to make sure that you don't binge on official materials. That is baked into the study plan. If you run through the official guide, for example, if you run through all of the multi-source reasoning questions all in a week or two, you're not going to have anything left as you approach your test date. So the study plan meters those out very, very carefully. Please don't jump ahead. It's just going to hurt you in the long run. Similarly, this study plan is meant for 13 weeks. We get the question all the time, can I do it in 4 weeks? Can I do it in 6 weeks? Please don't do that. If you only have 4 weeks before your test, this study plan is not for you. Don't try to condense it. That's really going to minimize its value. So it is meant for 13 weeks. Please use it that way. Okay, so what happens if you start looking at the study plan and you go, wait a minute, this doesn't feel quite right for me. I'm really far from the benchmarks in one area, but above them in another. What should you do? If you need to make some adjustments to the study plan, by all means, please do so. One of the features we've baked in There's plenty of optional stuff throughout it. If you need extra work on certain quant topics, for example, we'll provide you some ways to do that. If you're really good at quant, you're struggling on verbal, we're going to provide you with some optional verbal homework. Data insights, full disclosure, a little bit trickier just because there's such a limited supply of good quality official data insights questions. A little bit hard to get the extra practice there, but we are going to put in tons of optional videos and learning resources. So across the board, if you need to spend more time on one thing and less on another, you can certainly do that. Just please make sure that those decisions are 100% data driven. So you don't want to be based on, oh, I feel worse on quant or I feel worse on data insights. Let your scores do the talking, let your data do the talking. And again, that's why we provide those benchmarks in that interpretation section every single week. So you can go,
Wait a minute.
I feel bad on this, but my numbers are pretty good. I'm hitting the benchmarks. That probably means you're on track. Even though the questions feel tough, you might be in good shape. So by all means, do the optional stuff if you want to. Skip it if that's better for you. Just make sure that your decisions are totally rooted in that data. All right, guys, I realize it's a little bit of a cliche, but I really want you to be patient through this process, and I mean that in a couple of different ways. First of all, be patient with your own progress. The average person who retakes the GMAT from their first attempt to their second attempt improves by just 30 points. And those gains are actually even smaller from your second to third test. It's also smaller for people who are already scoring high. So if you're already in the 600s, statistically, you're less likely to gain even those 30 points. So again, if you're looking for 50 points or 100 points, it will probably take some time. Be patient with yourself. Second, be patient with the process. Keep in mind that we've designed it to meter out those official materials really, really carefully. So if you're sitting there going, oh my God, I feel terrible about this data insights question type, don't go binging on them. Be patient. All of the official questions are coming during the 13 weeks. Let that process unfold, and we're going to do our best to have you do those practice questions at the point where they're going to help you the very most. All right, last thing, pause if you need to. So again, the study plan is meant for a certain kind of person in mind who has these 15 high quality hours to devote and is starting at some pretty good skill level. Now, if you find that you're really struggling on the basic quant, or your reading skills are really shaky, or you're really unfamiliar with the kinds of graphs and charts you see on data insights,
I understand nothing.
and if you need to pause the study plan to work on some of those things, by all means, go for it. There is absolutely no shame in stopping and saying, you know what, I'm going to spend a few weeks working on my underlying reading skills, or I'm going to spend a few weeks working on my underlying algebra skills. If you need to do that, by all means, do it. Similarly, just as importantly, please don't get burnt out. Take care of your body, take care of your mind. Again, this is not a memorization test. It's not a knowledge-based test. It's a test of your reasoning skill, your reading skill, your ability to think on your feet. As soon as you get fatigued or burnt out, it's really hard to do those things. So if you feel like, boy, all this stuff's going in one ear and out the other, I'm miserable doing it, I'm exhausted, I'm having a hard time keeping my head off the desk, hey, you're not alone. Happens to everybody at some point in this process. If that's happening, hit the pause button, take a week, take care of yourself, and come back to it. The study plan will be there for you. This is our 13-week study plan. Everything you need to make a big leap on the GMAT, showing up in your inbox every single week. All you need to do, sign up on the GMAT Club website. That's it. Have fun studying, everybody, and we'll see you next time.